Well, let's look at some of the significant highlights of this sacred history. The number of Jews became so numerous in Egypt that Pharaoh issued a decree that all of the firstborn of the Hebrews must die. For protection, the mother of Moses, Jochebed, placed her baby in a basket to float along the Nile River. The daughter of Pharaoh, Bithiah, drew the basket from the water. It is said that the very name Moshe or Moses comes from this act. Moses was then raised in Pharaoh's household as a potential prince of Egypt. A movie idea for your kingdom, by the way. According to the story, Moses saw an Egyptian flogging or beating a Jew. Something within Moses caused him to in turn flog and kill the Egyptian. Such an act raised questions about about his loyalty to Pharaoh. Moses then had to flee to the land of Midian, present-day Saudi Arabia, where he met up with Reuel or Jethro and his daughters who raised animals in the desert. It would be in this setting that Moses would meet his wife, Zipporah, the oldest of Reuel's daughters. The next major part of this story was the Ten Commandments scene you hopefully watched and I described. In this theophany, Moses received a prophetic call and returned to Ramses II, demanding that Pharaoh release the Jews. Of course, why would any ruler release free labor? The next part of this drama can be seen as a test between the power of Yahweh and the gods of Egypt. There was an initial contest between the magicians of Egypt and the power of Moses and his magic wand. Oh, let me correct that. In class, I would have pretended that Moses was a magic man with a wand given to him on Mount Sinai. You bright young things would have yelled out to me, "No, Professor, it wasn't Moses who wielded the power. It was God's power. Moses is just the vehicle." This correction applies to the following miracles, namely the 9 plagues suffered by Egypt. Water to blood, frogs, lice or gnats, wild animals or flies, pestilence of livestock, boils, thunderstorms of hail and fire, locusts. I will hopefully place some links in Canvas of a leading Yale professor discussing some of the significant dynamics of this and other parts of this sacred history. As I go through this sacred history, young people, I want you to keep in mind a number of things. Think about what is the nature of God and what is the nature of the covenant. Are these notions changing? Are they getting larger as we go through this drama? There were 10 plagues, not 9. The last plague, not listed thus far, would turbocharge the Exodus. This last plague would be a kind of a reversal of what Pharaoh had decreed against the Jews many years earlier. Basically, all the firstborn of Egypt would die, except for those Jewish households that painted ram's blood on their door sills. As the angel of death swept across Egypt, it would pass over the Hebrew households. From this theophany is derived the terms Passover or Pesach. This is an observance still reenacted by most Jews and even a growing number of Christians to this day. You might notice on this slide some delicious looking crackers. Those are matzah crackers, the type of unleavened bread that Jews eat during the Passover season. According to the story, the Jews didn't have time to let any bread rise as they were rushed that night. Back to the story. As the last plague was smiting all the firstborn of Egypt, this of course affected the son of Pharaoh. Due to this, Ramses II would finally allow the Jews to leave Egypt. As the Jews were departing, Pharaoh had a change of heart and sent his forces after the Jews. The next theophany was when the Jews found themselves between Pharaoh's army and the Red Sea, actually a sea of reeds. As the Jews passed between the waters, Pharaoh's army were restrained by a pillar of fire. As the Hebrews were leaving Egypt, the army were eventually able to make chase as the Hebrews made it to the other shore. Many of you bright young things know what happens next. Some of you might be singing to yourself, Pharaoh's army got drowned by the Red Sea. I phrased this last phrase to match a famous Negro spiritual, Go Down Moses. Remember, this story has provided meaning for many oppressed peoples. The next major event was the approach to Mount Sinai, or Oreb, depending on the biblical source. Here is a major theophany, along with an addition to the covenant. While the Hebrews remained at the base of the mountain, Moses scaled the same Oxus Mundi he had when he received his prophetic call. At the top of the mountain, Moses received the 15 commandments. What? You young people are screaming to yourselves. On the right upper corner of the slide is a picture from the Mel Brooks movie where Moses comes down from the mountain and yells out, I have 15! One of the tablets falls and breaks. 10 commandments! This was from a Mel Brooks comedy that you can't use for your thingdoms. Back to the story. What Moses received were the 10 commandments, also called the Decalogue. He was at the summit with God for 40 days. Why so long? Well, according to the Jewish tradition, Moses received a great deal more than just 10 commandments. He received the Torah, both written and oral forms. The Torah will turn out to be the most important revelation for Judaism. Meanwhile, at the base of the mountain, the Hebrews were getting restless. Why 40 days? Some must have thought he had died, or left them and returned to Egypt. Feeling deserted, or feeling the temptation toward animistic and polytheistic religiosity, Aaron had them carve a golden calf out of the gold and other metals they had smelted. They began to worship the golden calf and perform various sinful activities. This activity would anger both God and Moses. God was tempted to destroy or leave and break the covenant with them. In parts of the Hebrew Bible, Moses plays a prophetic intermediary role, both admonishing his people but also defending them to God. The covenant was tested, but keep in mind that something significant had been added.